Happy Friday, everyone, and welcome to Conversations on Care, our Facebook talk show bringing together our senior care service providers, our clients, our caregivers to help families better understand and cope with aging parents with chronic care needs. My name is Julie Collada, and I'm the founder and president of Open Arms Solutions. Open Arms is a home care company serving the Chicagoland area, focused on inspired home care solutions for seniors with chronic conditions such as dementia, Parkinson's, and other movement disorders. It's our mission to help our families through this journey with their loved ones and to know that their loved one is living their best life possible. If you find these dialogues helpful, please give us a like and a share so that it can be reached and more people who need this information can see it. If you have any questions or topics you'd like us to learn more about or you'd like to learn more about, please write them in the comments below. So with me today is Eric Johnson, the founder and the CEO of Movement Revolution. Our topic today is exercise is medicine for people with neurological conditions. Eric, so happy to have you here and really looking forward to this conversation.
As am I. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you bet. Let's start with what inspired you to start Movement Revolution? Tell us your story. How did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, so it's been kind of a wild, kind of unassuming ride, actually. So, kind of dates back. My grandfather growing up was like a second father to me, and he actually passed away of an aneurysm, brain aneurysm, when I was back in high school, which kind of caught me off guard. He had a TIA before he had his brain aneurysm, and that kind of always stuck with me. And growing up, I was always taught to do good for others and do good things to give back to others. And that's kind of always resonated with me. So when I went to school for college, I started as a business major, and I liked it. I liked what I did, but it wasn't giving me that sense of giving back. And so I switched my major halfway through and decided I wanted to devote my career to health and wellness. I didn't really know where that health and wellness journey was going to take me, but I knew that would allow me to help people. So following up from school, I actually did an internship at the Rehab Institute of Chicago, which is now the Shirley Ryan Ability Lab, and really got to know more about adaptive exercise programming for people with Parkinson's disease and other neurological conditions, much like my grandfather had. And that really kind of spurred my passion to work with the neurological community and to provide exercise and wellness resources for people that can really help them live better. We typically work with people that have already had a stroke or have had a diagnosis of Parkinson's disease. We know how beneficial exercise can be to prevent some of these conditions, like stroke and heart disease. But people really need a resource and an outlet to be better and continue to rehab after physical therapy ongoing. And that's really what spurred my interest in my want to start Movement Revolution, was to really provide a better resource, a more accessible resource for people to continue to recover after they're done with traditional physical therapy. I having worked at the Ability Lab for as long as I did, I was able to develop programs as research was coming out for people with Parkinson's disease and the importance of exercise when living with Parkinson's disease. And I had actually thought that I was going to go back to school to be a physical therapist. That was my goal. And having worked with a ton of great physical therapists that we still work with today, I realized, there has to be this opportunity for people to continue to receive specialized care in an exercise setting after they're done with traditional physical therapy. And that's really what kind of spurred my interest in starting Movement Revolution.
That's amazing. And you and I both share that we're very fortunate that we're passionate about what we do and how we can help people. We have different stories that got us here, but I from the first time I met you. That passion came through, and it was really all about how can I help people that have suffered these, are in either a stroke or, some of these debilitating long-term chronic diseases. How can I help and enhance their life? And you and I got connected, and I really appreciate Joan Gardner from the Struthers Care Network said you really need to meet Eric. He's in Chicago, and just some of you have heard on this program, the Struthers Care Network, and I hope some of the ladies are listening to the conversation, is an amazing resource that we are part of, and they are part of they specialize in Parkinson's care. And actually, the Struthers Network specializes in helping organizations that provide services to seniors get specialized training and support so they can better serve specifically Parkinson's patients. And one of the things that Joan Gardner said to me from the Struthers Institute is there's something called Rock City Boxing.
Rock Steady Boxing, yes.
Rock Steady, thank you. Rock Steady Boxing. Sorry. And I know through some of the training that we went through Struthers, there was so much evidence of the amazing benefits of exercise for Parkinson's patients. Obviously, it goes well beyond Parkinson's patients. But why don't you, let's jump to what's the difference between what you and your team do?
Yeah.
And you have, and I don't know if you coined this phrase. I never heard the phrase before, but neuro exercise.
So neuro-intensive exercise is kind of a phrase that we've coined as kind of our method on how we work with our clients. And we get that from all of the research that's come out to say, whatever you do when it comes to exercise, it has to be intense to make a change in the body and the brain. So we're focused on neurological conditions. That exercise for neurological conditions has to be intense. And that's really where our neurointensive exercise method has come from. So it's kind of this unique blend of evidence-supported research, and we try to take that research and really put it into action. It's great to have that done in a clinical trial, but if it can't be implemented effectively in the community, it's not going to help people as much. So that's really our mission, is to take that research, take that evidence, look at traditional forms of exercise and rehabilitation exercises and methods to help people with these conditions, and really fuse them together in a very client-centric, individualized approach. And that's really what we try to work on. That's what our neurointensive exercise method is. We treat every client as an individual. People with Parkinson's disease, if they're diagnosed at the same date, at the same age, same gender, they're going to experience a completely different path with their condition. Same goes for stroke, same goes for MS, across all spectrums, right? We're all individuals. So we really try to work on acknowledging what is helpful from a broad spectrum, but then really focus and hone in on what is going to be the most helpful person, what's going to be the most helpful thing for this specific person.
Right.
And I think that's where, we always get kind of the question, what's the difference between us and physical therapy? And we're all exercise professionals. We don't have any clinical members on staff. We're all private pay. It is a community-based exercise facility. And so we're not bound typically by some of the constraints that are on clinicians with Medicare and insurance, where we're really kind of looking at the broad spectrum on an ongoing setting to help people long-term. And we collaborate with a lot of those other clinicians.
That's great. Thank you for explaining those differences.
Mm-hmm.
So talk about the different kinds of conditions that you see the most of, or people, not conditions, people who come to you. What are the conditions that you see?
So we've been a Rock City Boxing affiliate now for 6 years. So a lot of our clientele has diagnosis of Parkinson's disease or atypical Parkinsonism, so Lewy body dementia, MSA, progressive supranuclear palsy. So we do see a lot of those other conditions, but because we have group classes, we have a lot of volume in those group classes, we see a lot of people with Parkinson's disease. We also see a lot of people who are recovering from stroke, spinal cord injury, brain injury, dementia, Alzheimer's, different types of cancer, specifically brain cancer. So it really spans the spectrum of neurological conditions and complex medical conditions because when people come to us and they might have Parkinson's disease, they might also, they're typically a little bit older in age, although we have a lot of young onset people with Parkinson's as well. But when you get to later stages of life, arthritis and other heart conditions, and there's kind of the myriad of different things that sometimes present themselves, and we're very comfortable working with people at any of those ability levels and any of those conditions.
Great, thank you for that. So take us through a lot of different questions. What does the relationship look like between your team of neuro intense exercise specialists, the client, and their, one of the things that certainly I have learned and we've learned through the Struthers Network is that there's a whole team, a clinical team, PT, OT, nutritionists, just a neurologists, of course, that really should be there for a patient with some movement disorders. So what does the relationship look like between your team and the rest of those clinical?
Yeah, so it's a unique role, and I think I really enjoy talking with folks such as yourselves and people affiliated with the Struthers Network because it is super important to have that team and that collaborative, cohesive team working for the client, working for the patient. And our role as exercise professionals, we see our clients anywhere from, typically we see people twice a week. So that's roughly 100 visits throughout the year. We're looking at people maybe 75 to 150 times a year where we're having touch points with our clients. And that's a lot more than they have with their doctor, more than they have with their physical therapist or their occupational therapist. So we put a high importance on our role and our responsibility as their exercise professional to have a voice within their care team. So we try to collaborate as much as we can and as much as we need to with the client, their family members, and their care network. So if they have a care provider at home, we want to make sure that we're working with them to develop a good home exercise program for them. But we also want to communicate with them if they're in physical therapy or their doctor. So we reevaluate all of our clients. We evaluate and then reevaluate every 3 months. And we try to keep their care team up to speed on what we're working on, what are the physical outcomes that we're tracking and measuring, and what are the goals that we're working toward. And hopefully that helps guide the care plan for their neurologist, their movement disorder specialist to kind of tweak some things. We've had some situations where people have brought their meds and reduced their medications with Parkinson's because they're doing so well with their exercise program. That's not forever, and that's not everyone's case, but it certainly is possible. And that communication is really important.
Absolutely. That's great. So there's a viewer question that I want to make sure we get to, and that is, do you and your team focus on diet and nutrition in addition to the exercise with your clients?
Yeah, as you mentioned, the traditional care team is typically your doctor, your PT, your OT, maybe a speech therapist, maybe a social worker. But we really focus on what's good for the brain, right? We are neuro exercise specialists, and exercise is one component over here. Diet and nutrition is another equally important component over here. So, we heavily focus on the importance of diet and nutrition and also sleep. So those three factors combined really significantly affect how someone feels every single day. So we've collaborated with some registered dietitians in the past, and we absolutely refer people out to those services or have them discuss that with their doctor, and then they make the referral for them. But certainly what people put into their body has a direct impact to the brain. There's a lot more research coming out that's showing that. And then also, as people go through these conditions, there are a lot of other factors that come into play that might impede people's ability to take in enough food or enough fluids, and we need to be aware of that as well. So we definitely see that there's a heavy importance with collaborating with those diet and nutritional people as well.
Great. Makes sense. So when you, let's just talk about the process when someone comes to you for the first time, when you see someone for the first time. What's the first step that you take? Take us through that process with a new family, and then take us from there.
Yeah. So like I mentioned before, we treat every person that comes in as an individual. We have a lot of people coming in and they say, hey, I want to do rock steady boxing. I'm ready to go. Get me into that class. Let's go. And we don't just let people join into those classes without meeting them first and kind of getting to know them better. So every client that comes through our door goes through a pretty comprehensive movement evaluation before they go into any of our programs. So we look at balance, gait, posture, endurance, stamina. We have a thorough discussion on goals and kind of what their daily activity is like, just to get to know them as a person, get to know them as a unit, kind of what they enjoy doing in their life, so we can kind of cater their exercise program towards some of those things. So that's step one, and then from there we make our best recommendation for that person on what program is going to be the most effective and best way for them to move forward. So that might be rock steady boxing, that might be a lot of one-on-one training if someone has more difficulty with balance or falls, or has a hard time ambulating independently. That's a lot of our one-on-one services. And we also have virtual programs that we offer with on-demand videos that are very specific to certain symptoms. So even if someone's working with us in a class or in a one-on-one setting, we don't let them just come do that program and then go home and we don't mind what you do the rest of the week. We really want to make sure and guide them through, hey, what does your wellness week look like? What are you doing for yourself to help your energy throughout the day? And when you're here, that's really, really important. But those 23 other hours of the day when you're not with us, those are even more important. So, we try to guide and coach our clients throughout their process and make sure that we're kind of coming back to really what's important to them.
Great. You talk about rock steady boxing. Why is boxing so effective for people with Parkinson's and other movement disorders?
Yeah, so we kind of integrate boxing into our work with all of our clients, if they're able to do it. But specifically with Parkinson's disease, there are multiple factors that impact the motor symptoms of PD. So lack of arm swing, lack of leg swing through, maybe some tremors or some slowness of movement. And boxing has been studied to be one of the most intense forms of exercise to train for physically, just in any sport. I was not big into boxing before I started the Rock Steady boxing program, but it is an extremely effective way to help elicit more dynamic, more powerful movements than just reaching out and grabbing something or doing a repetition. If you're just going to reach your hand out to the front, you're probably going to go at a slower pace, maybe with some decent range of motion. But if you think about throwing a punch, that's a very big, forceful movement that's going to elicit more of a fast and intense response to the brain. So a lot of the research that's looked at exercise in Parkinson's disease, it's high amplitude, dynamic, big movements, right? Done with a lot of repetition. Well, if you think about what a punch is, that's a high, dynamic, forceful movement. So in that respect, that's really, really beneficial for people with PD. But even for our individuals with stroke, if they're reaching and you tell them to reach and touch something, they're going to do one thing. But if you tell them to reach and think about punching, you're just going to elicit more a heavier recruitment from motor recruitment from the brain to that working muscle that helps them work better. And along with that, boxing is not just about upper body. It's about your hips, your core. All your power when you box is at your midsection. It's in your hips. And a boxer never stands still. So it's dynamic upper body range of motion and movements. It's a lot of footwork, so it focuses on agility, which is really important for people with PD and for anyone working on balance. And then it's a lot of hip and core stability, which is really good for balance and posture and all of those other things. So it's very multifaceted, but I think that's one of the primary reason why it's shown to be so effective. And it's incredibly empowering to put boxing gloves on and hit a bag. We have some clients in their 70s that have never thought to even box, and they put the gloves on and they hit the bag. It's non-contact. Let me just preface that. It's all non-contact, so no one's hitting each other. But it's a lot of fun. It's a little more engaging. So
when I met you the first time, I went out to your facility in Deerfield. For those of you that know the old Berto Center, or is it still called the Berto Center, Eric?
People still know it as the Berto Center. Now it's called North Shore Sports and Wellness.
There you
the building itself, but yeah.
So that's where the Chicago Bulls train for. It's quite a facility. And when I met you for the first time there, there was a woman that was sitting down there that I got to talk to, and her husband was going through the training, and he had Parkinson's, and I think he'd had a Parkinson's for 5 or 6 years, and he'd been working with you and your team, and she was just a raving fan. So it was really, she talked about how much her husband enjoyed coming. He looked forward to it. It was, really added to the quality of his life. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a second, and I want to get to some of your examples of people you've worked with. But before I do that, just really quickly, so tell us about people with some kind of cognitive impairment. And how working, we've read and you and I talked about, and there's all sorts of studies after studies about how exercise can really improve blood flow to the brain and all those important things. So when you're working with someone with some kind of cognitive deficit, kind of describe what you do with that individual and incorporate the kinds of things that are going to help them.
Sure. Yeah, I think we see it a lot. We work with people that have Alzheimer's and dementia and also mild cognitive impairment. It's something that we're very attuned to, and we've had some good success in working with people and helping to, the whole goal there is to really slow the progression of that cognitive decline. So we follow the research, and all the research shows when you exercise vigorously and intensely within appropriate, levels for that individual, it can be neuroprotective. It can in some cases, it can even help delay and slow that progression. And there are studies coming out. There are studies looking at to somewhat reverse or disease modifying effects of exercise, specifically in Parkinson's disease. But as I think you and I talked previously, there's a lot of carryover between the research that's done with Alzheimer's disease, dementia, even Parkinson's disease. The brain functions in very similar ways for all of these conditions. And the things that we do for someone specifically with a dementia or an Alzheimer's disease is heavily focused on that cardiovascular conditioning, but we also want to work on a lot of executive functioning exercises along with that. So we're not just going to put someone on a treadmill or a bike and say, go as hard as you can, because one, that's boring. And we want people to adhere to their exercise routine. So we have to make it very functional for them. So we get to know, do they have kids? Do they like to travel? Where do they like to travel? And we try to incorporate some of those things into their routine as well. So we can work on the cognition and the memory of those really important things to them. And when you exercise, it's actually a great time to really focus on some of that cognitive multitasking. So when they're on the bicycle or they're doing a more complex exercise, instead of counting repetitions, every repetition gets a name of someone in your family, or we're spelling different fruits, or doing different math problems, and looking around the room to find and identify different objects. So we really look at kind of incorporate some of those more executive functioning activities along with the intense cardiovascular exercise. And it's been very helpful.
That's great. That makes sense. All right. Well, we only have about 5 minutes left, and we can take a little bit longer because I really want you to have a chance to tell people, and you've told me about it, but I want everyone to hear some examples of clients that you've worked with and some of their, the progress that they've made while working with your team.
Yeah. That's the most rewarding part about what we do. I mean, we have the ability to work with our clients long term. So many of our clients we've worked with for over a year, which is a great period of time to kind of see some truly functional gains. And we ask every client when they come in, what is something that you used to do that you either haven't done in a while or you want to get back to doing? And we've been really successful helping people get back and do those things. Sometimes it's something minor, like I want to be able to get out of my car by myself and walk into a store. But for other people, it's I want to get back to jogging. I want to get back to running. I want to get back to playing golf. I want to travel with my wife again. So it's amazing to hear those stories. But specifically, there are certain people that really stand out. And one example, we work with people at various stages of having Parkinson's disease. So this one particular gentleman, who was a rock steady boxing participant of ours, came twice a week. He had a really difficult time walking and freezing. It was really difficult for him to even walk through our door and transition to some of those exercises in the Rock Steady program. When we opened up our facility in Deerfield, he started coming to our Rock Steady 2 or 3 times a week. And then we also had an intensive cardiovascular conditioning class where he would either be on the bike or the treadmill 3 days a week. He was religious at coming in. And this just speaks so highly to the consistency and the regularity of that intense exercise. He really pushed himself, and he got to the point now he's back playing softball with his sons in a community rec league, which he loves to do. Every spring we have spring training. We get him back on the field and help him, get his throwing motion back and make sure he can still jog to first base, and he's walking much, much better. So that's one particular story. And then, we have other clients recovering from stroke where one particular gentleman, we've worked with him for just over a year now. He's about 2 years post-stroke, and he walked his first 5K 3 months ago in the middle of the summer. He's doing another one this week. Great
story. Yeah.
Yeah. So, there's amazing, great stories. No matter how big or how small that improvement is for a person, our goal is to make sure that they have and they can feel that improvement. I think anyone going through an exercise routine, you kind of get stagnant, and if you don't see progress, you kind of fall off. And we have these. What's interesting, I won't go too much on a tangent with this, but we have some people that are recovering from a neurological event. And then we have some people who have a diagnosis of a progressive condition. And those are 2 different mindsets. Those are 2 different areas of focus. So on one hand, someone recovering from a stroke sees functional gain a little bit more tangibly than someone with Parkinson's disease. But if we can help that person with Parkinson's manage their symptoms better and help them feel better throughout the day, and prevent that progression from occurring, that's our big goal. So there are 2 different sides of the spectrum, kind of 2 different ways that we approach their program. But our main goal is to help those individuals kind of figure out what progress looks like for them and make sure that they are on the right track.
That's great. That's terrific. Yeah. So we talked about the Deerfield, your Deerfield facility, but you have multiple facilities. You want to just take a minute and talk about where your different facilities are, and then maybe how best to reach out to you, how people can find you, and.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually started a movement in the city of Chicago, And we have a location in the Edgewater neighborhood of Chicago, Bryn Mawr and Sheridan Road. So just off the Lakeshore Drive there. And so we have Rocksteady Boxing and one-on-one services there. We have our Deerfield location, which is kind of our flagship site. So that's where I am now. And then actually this past spring, we opened up a location in the western suburbs in Glen Ellen. So we have programs one-on-one and Rocksteady Boxing in Glen Ellen. And we also teach another Rocksteady Boxing class in Elgin. So we're kind of reaching out to those northwest suburbs. But if, I always encourage anyone, if you have a neurological condition and you're exercising or you haven't been exercising, it's really important, if nothing else, to get an assessment to know what you need to work on specifically. That's step one. If you have some person you're already working with or a group you're already doing, that's great. But if you haven't been assessed, if you don't know what you're working toward, that's a really important factor that we can help you with. So we're always happy to help. And I think the best way to reach out to us is either give us a phone call. We have one direct phone number that kind of gets split off into our different locations. So that's 312.
Kara, did you put that up on the screen for the viewers? You probably already have. I just can't see it.
It's
we're going to make sure the phone number's up there and email information, other contact information.
You can always check out
contact information is in the comments section. Thank you, Sarah.
Perfect. Thank you, Sarah. And check out our website. That's where we're going to be posting a lot of our updated programs and events and services. Our social media, we try to post different videos on, what's going on around the gym and how we work with our clients. So love to get in contact with everyone. I really appreciate this conversation today. And I love what you guys do at Open Arms. And
thank you.
Happy to be a part of this community.
Yeah, thank you. I think what you and your team do is incredible. And it's consistent with our mission of really helping people live their best life possible. And that's absolutely clearly what you all do. So it's a thrill to be able to spend time with you. Thank you so much, and really look forward to working with you in the future.
All right. Likewise. Thank you very much.
Thank you.